scrutinized G-Hawk.
So Sack,
Yeah,
no,
There'll be a bunch of like 400 gear score like armchair PhDs going,
Yeah.
actually.
I resemble that remark.
Mom, you're not an armchair PhD if you have a PhD.
How did I hear your mum? She's muted.
She unmuted herself
I unmuted.
momentarily.
Oh, okay.
That's like, I don't know. Well, I guess Tom Brady retired, but
Oh, so
who
you
else
got
is
a
a quarterback?
You got a PhD as well, and your son is a super nerd.
Oh yes, I am a turbo nerd.
He comes by it honestly.
It's really tragic. Like,
Okay, I think we're a go.
okay, so
Ostrich guard isn't coming.
when you're ostrich god,
I PM'd him. I do not think he's coming, so we are a go.
So whenever you're trying to learn a new class, or you're trying to learn your class for the first time, the three most important things to ascertain are your protections, your movement abilities, and your CCs. And so your movement abilities will vary by class. So for example, for warrior, you have a lot of different movement options. You have your normal dash and awakening, which let's actually look at the name of this skill if I can. Head chase. You've got head chase. You've got a bunch of different other things, including like solar flare and shield charge and all this stuff, right? That you can cycle. Things like sorceress have fewer options, where they just mainly use things like Nightcrow or what is it called? Shadow Leap, something like that, WF and Awakening, etc. Right? And so you should also not only ascertain your movement abilities that move you, but also what types of protection they have. And so moving into protection, there are three types of protection in the game. There's frontal guard, super armor, and invulnerability frames or iframes. You'll hear me refer to frontal guard as FG and super armor as SA. I'm going to demonstrate what each of those do, but I'm going to explain first. Frontal guards do exactly what they sound like. They block from the front. They will block both damage and CC. Although grabs are an exception. Grabs will land through frontal guard or super armor. The only thing that grabs don't work on is an invulnerability frame or iframe. The problem or sort of the weakness of frontal guards is, as I said, they block the front, so they don't protect you from behind. You will take full damage from anything behind you. You can be CC'd by anything coming from behind you. And so, Amma, if you'll stand up really quick. Amma? Okay. There we go. Okay, so Amma, I'm gonna do a frontal guard away from you, and I would like you to CC me when I start doing the frontal guard. Okay? Are you ready? All right, go ahead and use Voltaic. Okay, so I started my frontal guard move while I was facing away from her, and it still knocked me down. But if I'm facing her, go ahead and use Voltaic again. You see how I was not CC'd because I was using a frontal guard skill. Also, I took no damage because my frontal guard skill blocked the damage. The next type of protection I'll go over. So also, yeah, this is what Witch's frontal guard looks like. She presses Q to do that. And if I hit her, you can see I just kind of blink off. Although, yeah, there we go. And she doesn't take damage, and she wouldn't take any CCs either. The next type of protection I'm going to go over is super armors. Super armors do not block damage, but they do block CCs. Once again, grabs being accepted. So, Amma, if you will use Voltaic again, I will do a super armor. And you can see I am not knocked down, but I did take full damage. I am at just about half HP. So, that's what super armors are good for. And so if Amma goes for Voltaic again, that is a super armor of hers, and I can grab her out of it, except I was shield stunned. Try it one more time when it's off cooldown. I am able to grab her out of it. The last thing is iframe. So iframes are harder to demonstrate because they tend to be short. It's hard to demonstrate their properties, but they're sort of easy to remember anyway. Iframes make you invulnerable for their duration. Witch and Wizard have it on their shift space, their teleport. Sorceress have it on their spammable movement option, shift ADS. That's their Night Crow. Tamers have it on their evasion, their just their normal little hop thing. But yeah, it will evade any damage and any CC, including grabs, which is why it is sort of the best type of protection, but it also tends to be short. Whereas something like Grave Digging on Warrior is a much longer super armor, because you still take damage. Like it's not quite as bad a balance issue to give it a longer duration. So to recap, Frontal Guard blocks damage and CC from the front, not from the back, and is susceptible to being grabbed. Super armors block no damage, but do prevent you from being CC'd by everything except a grab, and that effect is 360 degrees. It's not directional, unlike Frontal Guard. And then finally, there is iframe, which prevents all damage, all CCs, including grabs. So it's important to go through your skills, and this is on a class-by-class basis, and if you need help figuring out which of your skills do what, you can contact me later, and I can go through sort of class-specific stuff with you. But for now, you should read through your skills, become familiar with which of your skills have what type of protection, and then those are sort of the primary skills that you'll use on your class. Because the game is sort of balanced such that 1 CC is pretty much all it will normally take for someone to kill you. So you should be playing protected at all times, or when you're doing unprotected things, you should be doing them in a context in which you are confident that you will not be punished or CC'd. So let's move into CCs now. There are a bunch of different types of CCs, and broadly I categorize them into 2 different types. There's the standing CCs, after which you will be standing, and then the knockdown CCs, which will leave you on the ground. So the first of the standing CCs that I will show you is called a stiffen, and it should look like this. You see how she kind of flinches for about a second? That's what a stiffness looks like. The next I will show you is a stun. Oh, I guess that's a stiffen too. Never mind. Does Warrior have a stun? I thought that was a stun, but a stun will leave you standing as well, but it lasts 2 seconds if I remember correctly, instead of the 1. And it also has a different animation. When people are stiffened, they'll look like they're almost like falling over, but they're sort of still standing up. Oh yeah, this is a stun. Here we go. So you see how she she resisted it. Never mind. Try again. She blocked it. I'm gonna stop blocking. Ugh. Yeah, almost like they're sitting down. Okay, how are you?
Do me. Do me. See, I'm sitting down
I guess
on a
that's
chair.
stiffen. Weird. I could have sworn that pommel strike was a stiffen or a stun. Okay, let's try this.
Yep, I'm stiff.
Oh, you blocked the stun. I'm so sad.
How did I? I'm not in block.
Or well,
mode.
not block. You resisted. Ugh, I missed.
I'm
missed again.
standing.
I'm trying to. I'm trying to miss the stiff and hit the stun, but I don't think that's going to be possible. So I'm just going to go for it. There we go. See how he's grabbing his head like that? That's the stun animation. And every class, for every class, the stun animation is someone's grabbing their head instead of looking like they're in a chair. See how he moves to that clutching their head, the headache animation? That's the stun animation. So you can tell if you have something that does a stiff, they're like sitting in a chair like that. It looks like you just punched him in the gut. But if you hit a stun, they'll clutch their head and they'll move, right? People are sort of static. They're frozen when they're stiffened, but it's a moving. No, CC stands for crowd control. Crowd control is sort of a generic gaming term, which refers to any ability in a game which generally limits either an NPC monster or a player's ability to like act. right?
Yeah,
So
requested
something like a
disabled.
snare in World of Warcraft or like a sleep in some other games. Stuns are a very common type of CC used across a variety of different games. Knockdowns, etc. This game has some funny names for some of their CCs, but like stiffness. But yeah, yeah, no problem. So that there's also knock back, and I need to figure out. Does this knock back? Amma, use shift right click Yoke of Ordeal on me. That has a knockback on it. Amma? Shift right click. That. You see how I'm being knocked back continuously? That is a knockback. Sort of self-explanatory. The next ones I'll go over are the grounding CCs, the knockdown CCs. The first one is bound. Amma, please. The bound looks like this. Or not.
Cheat assistant.
Yeah, Amma's actually just cheating. I'm gonna do it on Kiss because he doesn't cheat. There. He just goes on the ground and he gets up after about a second, maybe a second and a half. I think it's just about a second though. The next one is float, which looks like this. See how he gets launched into the air? That's a float. Also pretty self-explanatory. So the difference between those, in the CC duration, they're the same, but floats are special because when they knock you airborne like that, if you have a skill with air attack on it, air attack is a damage modifier. So if you've seen things like back attack or down attack, those are also damage modifiers, and they do differing amounts of damage multiplication. But air attack is the highest damage multiplier. So moves with both float and air attack. Amma, please. You're disrupting the class. You're disrupting the class. I'm gonna have to give you detention if you don't behave yourself. This is your last warning. Thank you.
She was trying to
Your
help you.
100% does not have a float or air attack on it. You ain't demonstrating anything. Don't give me lip. So, air attack is the strongest damage modifier. So, for example, if you see that damage, oh, he's being healed. 1 second. Okay, so now Kuch is. Let's see. Okay, you can all see his HP is at about like maybe 80%, 85%. So if I do that, that does maybe 10% of his HP. But if I float him first, that did closer to 30% of his HP. So you can see the excess damage from air attack if I float him first.
So you have to hit them in the air, right? It doesn't work if they've landed.
Correct. If you are doing something with air attack, then you must land the skill that has the air attack modifier while they are in the air.
Yeah, so you have a pretty small window, but yeah,
You do have a very small window, which is normally why only skills that have a float on them and air attack, or skills into which you can quickly cancel, have useful air attacks. So, for example, I used counter into shield bash with the air attack, and I can instantly cancel that, which is why I can get it off. Another good example is Sorceress's Shadow Ignition, Shift X, their Rabum, has a float on it, an air attack, and an air smash. So it keeps them up in the air, and then it does all of its damage after the float, which is why it does such a ridiculous amount of damage. Like that's a third of the damage in their kit, basically, is on Shadow Ignition. So that's float. Both of them are about 1 second CCs, but they have the difference where float engages sort of the air attack modifier if it applies. That's on a skill by skill basis. So if a skill has air attack, you'll see it on the skill description. If not, it doesn't. The last of the CCs is knockdown, and this is the truly scary / really good one, and it looks like this. You can see it kind of looks like a float, but you see he's down for 3 seconds instead of 1. He's down for a good long while. Knockdowns are the longest CC in the game, and that is important because in the game there is a hidden counter, the CC counter, and it goes. Oh, sure. So I will knock down Kiss. Boom, and now he is on the ground. 2, 3, get up.
Oh, I don't. Do I have to? Do I actually have to move to get up?
If you do not press a button while you're on the ground, this is a good thing to mention, so thank you for asking. If you get knocked down and you don't press a button, you will stay down longer than you need to. So if you're a PvPing and you get knocked down, hold a directional button. Or even better, buffer a skill. So I will show you what buffering looks like. Kiss, if you'll grab me. Or yeah, knock me down in any way.
I missed my grab.
You're great at this. Just knock me down. Okay. So I'm holding WRMB. And as soon as I get up on the first frame it's available, you saw me do that bash, whatever the heck it's called. What is it called? No. Where's the thing? Hilt strike, I think. No, balance strike. There we go.
So
Balance
by
strike.
charge up, you don't actually mean the charge skills that take 3 bars of charging. You just mean like hold a skill. So as soon as you're up, it just triggers it.
I'm calling it buffering. So Alma, if you knock me down again, I am currently holding WRMB. I'm still holding it, boom, and it goes off. So if I hold it up until the CC ends, it will go off as soon as it can. So, for example, Kiss, if you do Shift F, and then as soon as Shift F starts, do Shift RMB. Like hold Shift RMB. Do it like away from people. You see how that goes off immediately as soon as it's available?
Hmm.
That's what I mean by buffering. So if you're on the ground, right? So here, knock me down on the ground. That does not knock me down on the ground. Okay, so now I'm going to hold WRMB, and I can stiff you on get up. Right?
I'm stiff.
Well, yeah, and then it stunned you afterwards. But yeah, that's useful because normally after combos, you will be CC immune. Where I was earlier was on the CC counter. The CC counter goes up to 2, after which you become CC immune for 5 seconds, which puts a limit on how long your combos can be. So if I float Kiss, and then I knock him down, I cannot grab him. I cannot re-CC him until the float resisted, the grab resisted, all that stuff will be 100% resisted because he is CC immune from hitting that 2 cap. The exceptions are stiffnesses and knockbacks. I also didn't demonstrate freeze because I don't have one. Oracle, can you hit SE on me? You can see I'm frozen. Sorry, this is a little bit sudden, but I forgot about freezes because they're a little bit of a niche CC.
Yeah,
but yeah, so freezes are only accessible by very few classes, namely Witchards, but also there are some classes that have skill add-ons with like a random chance to freeze people if they hit, which are sometimes used. But freeze is special because when you get frozen, you get a significant amount of DR, which is damage reduction. You take very significantly reduced damage while you are frozen, but then afterwards you'll be bounded. So you'll be put on the ground and you'll get up about a second later. And once you're on the ground, you start taking full damage again. That's just something to keep in mind if you are a class with a freeze. If you do freeze someone, wait for the ice block to break and you see them on the ground, then you can follow up with the follow-up CC or damage or whatever. And I'll get to what follow-up CC means later when I'm talking about sort of how to combo and like the theory behind creating a combo. But so that's all the CCs. And so the CC counter, most CCs are 1 CC. They count as 1 on the counter. The exceptions are knockback and stiff, which count as 0.7. So you can do 3 knockbacks or stiffnesses, or you could do 2 stiffnesses or knockbacks and then 1 of the other CCs, or 1 stiffness and 2 of the other CCs. So if I stiff Kiss and then I grab him, then I'm kind of slow on this, but then I knock him down, that goes through. But then once he gets up, if I try and stiff him again, it will not work. He resists it. Because I went to 0.7 when I stiffed him, then grabbed him and went to 1.7, which is not capped. He is not immune. Then I knocked him down, which puts him at 2.7, at which point he has exceeded the 2.0 cap, and he is immune for 5 seconds. So that's how the CC cap works. So, in light of that, that sort of influences how classes combo. As you can imagine, you want to maximize the amount of time they're on the ground, because things like down attack only apply when they're on the ground, and also they can't dodge your damage if they're on the ground, and you can use unprotected damage skills to try and kill them as quickly as possible. So in general, the way combos are designed is such that you start with some sort of what's called a catch CC. Normally, you're moving around, you're fighting the person, you're in what people who in fighting games call neutral, which is you're both up, you're both in full control of your character, nobody has an advantage, right? And we're just fighting. Neutral ends when one player gets CC'd. And so, for example, if I grab Kush, we have ended neutral, I have one neutral, right? Because then I can combo him. BDO is kind of a weird fighting game. BDO does have a lot of characteristics of fighting games, but it's a little bit weird in that normally in most fighting games, winning neutral once is not enough to win the game, right? So if you look at most arcade fighters, you can combo for a while, but normally you don't just one combo someone unless it's a very, very ideal situation. Whereas in this game, it is expected, unless they're using a DP build, that if you grab someone, you just kill them 100-0, right? Every time. Every class should be able to do that. If you can't one combo someone and they can one combo you, that is a very hard fight to win. So, in light of that, when you're designing a combo, you'll start off with some sort of catch, either from a stiffness or a grab or whatever. And you'll be aware, generally speaking, of which of your skills are more likely to CC, just based on like your play style. You'll know which CCs, like after a while, obviously, once you've had some experience, you'll have an expectation of when you think a CC will land and which of your CCs are more likely to generate a catch. And so, when you get a catch, you should have an idea of what kind of combo you want to do based off of that catch. Some classes have more combo variety than others. For example, Ninjas is fairly freeform. Warrior is fairly freeform. Guardian less so. Also, why though your dog is being very bad? Can you punish it for me? Thank you. So, in general, a combo will look like CC, then damage, then CC, then damage. And so the first CC is going to be your catch, which is when you end neutral and you sort of enter your combo phase or your advantage state. Then you're going to do some sort of damage or some sort of setup. So for example, I'm going to do the combo I did on Kiss Slowly. I did a grab to end neutral. I swapped. I hit him with a skill and then immediately canceled it into this little slap move here. That one. I use that because it shreds his DP. It lowers his defense, which means that the rest of my combo does more damage. So in general, if you are a class with DP shred, you try and work that in as early as possible in the combo so that you're amping the damage of the rest of your combo. So, starting over, I grab him, I swap, I hit him, I smack him, and then I re-CC. So that was sort of the first damage phase from the catch. The first damage phase, which obviously does a fairly notable amount of damage, as well as sort of has some utility. It reduces his accuracy and it reduces his DP for my follow-up, and then I do my follow-up CC before he can get back up. Then, after I have done my follow-up CC, I dump my highest damage skills. So once Oracle heals him, I will grab, swap, damage, DP shred, re-CC. He's resisted, but then I drop slashing the dead, and that if he's on the ground, he definitely dies to that. And that's my big damage. And not only will I do slashing the dead, I'll do a couple of other things, because knockdown is a 3-second CC. So I have kind of all the time in the world, assuming he doesn't resist it. So there. I can do that, and then that, and that'll definitely kill him. So the way that combo was designed is get a catch CC, do some setup, re-CC, and then blow all my damage. Now, other classes will have slightly different looking combos. So for example, if Ama catches me with like Voltaic, she might do Thunderstorm, and then what's WF called again, Ama? Detonative Flow. Detonative Flow to refloat me, and then she'll like, and then yeah, she can shift right click or shift LMB or whatever to kill me. And so yeah, you generally design your combos around CC damage, or CC setup, CC damage, whatever, depending on your class. But yeah, that's in general how you create and optimize combos. So I'm gonna go to my list of topics that I had written down. Right, trading. Okay, let's go to trading. So trading is when you want to sort of reduce your opponent's health in neutral without needing to move to an advantage state, without having to land a CC, right? So Amma, would you use Voltaic? So I'm sitting in front of, oh, whoops, I did the wrong thing. Sorry. Let me just use it when it's off cooldown again. But let's say I run up to Amma and I hit Q because I know a witch doesn't have a grab, so I'm safe to just block in front of her. So I was late. Oi. Use it again when it's off cooldown. But so when I see her winding up for Voltaic, I can use a frontal guard skill and I can trade into her. And you see how I remain pretty much full health, but she loses some HP, right? And so I have just gained an HP advantage, and I sort of exert pressure on her because now I have an HP advantage. So trading my frontal guard into her super armor means that I don't take damage, but she does. So I gain an HP advantage. That's an example of a trade. Another example of a trade is just if I have a super armor that I know will do more damage than her super armor. So if you'll use Voltaic again. That was an example of a bad trade because for whatever reason, Slashing the Dead did not do damage that time. I think I just dropped a lot of frames. But yeah, so that would have been a one trade for Tal. If she saw that I was going to do like Slashing the Dead and she went for Voltaic, she would have won that trade. In general, trading frontal guards into super armors is a good idea if you can, because your frontal guard will absorb all of the damage and their super armor will not absorb your damage and you'll generate a health advantage. Trading becomes especially important on when you or your opponent is at low HP. This guy's just gonna interrupt. Don't attack him, please. Amma, don't. So, where was I? Oh, trading. Yeah. So when you're on low HP, trading becomes a little bit higher stakes because obviously if you take too much damage, you just die, right? So one thing a lot of people do when they panic on low HP is they'll use a super armor. If you remember what super armors do, they block CC, they don't block damage. If you're on low HP, it is more important to block damage. And so, generally, frontal guards and iframes are your best and pretty much only choice on low HP. So, by contrast, people on high HP will feel safer using super armors. So, if you're on low HP and they're on high HP, you can frequently get very advantageous trades into people who are sort of just overconfident and make the mistake of just running at you and using an AoE super armor to try and finish you. So you frontal guard, you trade damage into them, they super armor, do nothing to you. And yeah. You end up sort of winning that trade. Also, if you are sort of on high HP and trying to finish someone with low HP, in general, frontal guard skills will tend to hit in front of you, whereas super armor skills they have varying damage profiles, but a lot of them will hit in an AoE sort of centered on you. So, for example, Awakening Guardian, Shift Q, God Incinerator, Witches, Voltaic Pulse, etc. Are sort of centered in a circular AoE around you. And so those are good to use if someone is on low HP trying to maneuver around you. Chances are you can find small gaps in their protection, and you might be able to chip them out with a hit of your AoE super armor. Hello. Someone joined. I don't know who it was, but yeah. So that's pretty much trading. Trading frontal guards into super armors generates an HP advantage, or just trading a stronger hit into a weaker hit generates an HP advantage. And when you're on low HP, prioritize frontal guards and iframes over super armors, because super armors you're just going to get killed. So let's move on to netcode. So in this game, and just sort of game like engine mechanics in general, in this game, a lot of things depend really heavily on your frame rate. So in general, dropping your graphical settings as low as they'll possibly go for PvP is optimal. You will actually do more damage per skill, per hit, with higher frame rate. And if you drop frames, if your frames stutter, if you lag during a combo or during a move, you saw when I used Slashing the Dead on Amma, she took literally almost no damage, right? And that's because I dropped frames due to her using Voltaic Pulse. That sort of lagged me out a little bit, and she just took no damage. Whereas she obviously wasn't dropping frames when she used her Voltaic, and I took half my HP. So, yeah, set your graphic settings low if you're PvPing. Also, from a netcode perspective, your ping is very important in this game. Anything you can do to sort of lower your ping or suppress your ping, your latency, will benefit you. In general, between each skill, there will always be a small gap, right? So if you're endeavoring to play without gaps in your protection, right? Like you're trying to move around, you're trying to whatever, you're trying not to have gaps, right? So people can't CC you. There will be gaps. And those gaps are sort of the size of your ping, right? Because you are constantly communicating with the game server. You're constantly telling it, okay, I want to use this skill, followed by this skill, followed by this skill. And so the server tries to recognize when you are protected and when you aren't protected. And you're basically telling it what you're doing, and your opponent is telling it what they're doing. And the server tries to resolve those two things and identify when you are CC'd. So, if between telling the server that I'm in a super armor and telling it that I'm in an iframe, there's a 30 millisecond gap because of my ping, and the opponent just happens to use a CC that coincides with those 30 milliseconds, I'll get CC'd even though on my screen I am buffering the iframe out of my super armor, so there's a 0 frame gap. So, obviously having a lower gap there is optimal. So things like exit lag, which I use, will increase your PvP performance. You will, on your screen, it'll look like you're getting caught out of super armors, or like you'll be in the middle of an iframe and you'll get knocked down or whatever. That stuff is really frustrating because it doesn't really feel like there's much you can do to prevent it. And also, there are certain skills in the game which really are culprits at doing that kind of thing, doing that desync CC. One example, why though? Can you pull out Highlang and then maybe step back a little bit? Hit Q. Oh, sorry, pull out your weapon and hit Q. You see this big, huge, dashy AoE thing? That is a stiff field, right? Anyone who walks into it gets stiffened. And because it hits so rapidly and in such a large area, it is very, very good at hitting people out of abilities or sort of in those very tiny gaps that shouldn't exist between abilities. Other examples of CCs that are very, very good at desyncing are Meiwa's Red Moon, Striker's Mass Destruction, trying to think what else, Valkyrie's Shield Throw, Warrior's Shield Bash, which is this thing when I have my shield out and I kind of glide forward like that. That desyncs very frequently. I'm trying to think of anything else. Nothing's really... Sorceress's Dream of Doom does it pretty solidly. I think that's most of it. Most of those just larger or sort of more rapid or persistent CC hits or fields will cause that type of desync. And so it's important to know about those skills and pay attention to them and their cooldowns when you're fighting those classes. So for example, if I'm fighting a Tamer, the matchup basically entirely revolves around me not walking into that stiff field. If I see the Tamer hit Q, I am not going near her until that stuff is gone or she's not in it, right? Because I can't. I physically can't. Like, I can try and walk up to her and grab her, but in between me hitting the E button to begin my grab and me grabbing her, you see, I got my grab animation started on my screen, right? Like, I grabbed her, and then I got stiffed because there was a small gap between when I came out of my frontal guard and when I started my protected grab animation, where I was not protected. And the persistent stiff field, because it's just always there, was able to hit me in that very small window. And I got stiffed, even though on my screen I started my grab animation, and there shouldn't be a gap. So that goes to matchup knowledge, and that goes to just sort of knowing how your class matches up into other classes. I guess one thing I forgot to mention when I was going through protections is the concept of lingering. So, a lingering super armor is the super armor which sort of continues to have its effect after sort of the main part of the skill is done. So, for example, Warrior's Gravedigging, which I'll do now, during the slashing bit, it's protected, but also until I lift my sword off the ground, that whole thing I have super armor, right? So even now, not protected, right? So that is an example of lingering. Another really good example of a lingering super armor is Mystic. Her Shift Q Rage Hammer. She'll smack the ground, and then she'll have like 2 seconds of this like very slow animation where she's just kind of straightens up, and that is all super armor. So lingering protections are very important if you think you're going to be facing one of those desyncy skills soon. So if you see, so for example, Striker's Mass Destruction, they kind of spin off to the side, and then they kind of kick back towards the center. They do like a punch kick kind of thing. So if you see them spin out, I'll use a super armor, right? And I'll try and linger it. Because if I try and do 2 separate super armors, I'm going to get caught in between. And so, yeah, the same thing with that stiff field. If I react to the stiff field with a super armor, optimally, I'll pick one with long lingering, right? So, why though? Hit Q. So if I want to trade with the Tamer, I can dash in and use a long lingering super armor, then dash out, right? And you see I didn't get CC'd. So that's a good use for lingering super armors, and that's also like not every skill with protection does have lingering, and so that goes to class knowledge as well.
Yeah, because it doesn't actually say on the tooltip, right?
No, and so that's something where you just talk to people who are more experienced, or you go on the Discord and you ask about lingering. I can tell you most of the lingerings and most of the kits if you just ask me. But yeah, that's lingering, and that's the use case for lingering against those particularly desync prone CCs in the game.
I was going to say a really good way you can start practicing your protection cycles is against Dark Rift bosses.
Although I agree, and just also when you're grinding in general, try and just like use movement combos and try and move in a protected way as just practice.
Yeah, because when I started, Dark Rift bosses I'd have to run away from and in and out because I didn't know those protection combos. But these days I just stand right on the boss and I just do my combos and it never hits me
Yes.
because I iframe and then super armor into front guard and just rotate. So yeah, that practice was real good.
I will mention though that in PvE, a lot of protections are just broken, particularly frontal guards, where most of the mobs in the game, for whatever reason, will just ignore frontal guards in terms of CC. So like if you're fighting Cavalli or Steel Nux or one of those really CC heavy Rift bosses, and you try to frontal guard, they're just gonna smack you anyway.
And that's just knocked out of the animation. You're right on that. Some bosses
not even the animation. Like if you're sitting in Q block, you're not even mid animation. You're sitting in Q block, and you get smacked by Cavalli. They'll knock you on the ground.
Is that the one on the horse?
That's the one on the horse. Yeah.
Yeah, he does that. Yeah,
but it's not just Cavalli. In Ackman, you can be in a super armor and you can get smacked by one of the big guys, and they'll put you on the ground. So keep in mind that for PvE, positioning is basically the only way to guarantee that you won't get CC'd because your protections don't work properly in PvE in general. Iframes work. I'll say that. Iframes work. Super armors and frontal guards, not so much in PvE. Yeah, try that against Cavalli, Telshani.
It works, but there are some bosses that is right on it does go through.
Yep. And also in Ackman, you'll get knocked down through that block pretty often. Which is a special case because your block also gives you resistance to CC. It gives 20% extra resist to all CC. So that's probably a reason why your block works better than most others. But in general, yeah, protections work great in PvP and less so in PvE. So that kind of goes over netcode, why ping is important, sort of minimizing the gaps between your skills. That goes over lingering, which is sort of a way to counter those netcode issues. Yeah. So for the end of it, I'm just going to talk about 1v1 small scale, a good FPS number. FPS, I mean, so beyond what your frame rate of your monitor is, it doesn't really matter that much. So if you've got a 60 hertz monitor, you want to get a solid 60.
Can I chime here
if you've got
this one?
Sorry, what?
Can I chime in on this one because I know a fair bit about this?
Sure.
As long as you can hold a solid 60 FPS with your lowest graphical settings for other players around, it's good. Aiming for above 60 FPS does not give you an appreciable return on your DPS.
I don't think that's true. I think people have done tests between 60 and 140 hertz, and they see very large differences in DPS.
Okay, my mistake. Then the last big and shiny report said otherwise, so I'll keep that in mind.
So I saw a video of someone, I think, doing 60 versus 144. I would be interested in seeing the big and shiny thing, though. Because I haven't seen him do DPS test or FPS testing, but I might just not have seen it. But yeah, definitely send me that. I'd like to see it. And it's possible that like maybe something got changed in a patch as well. But yeah, in general, from what I've seen, frame rate matters basically always. And also the other thing about frame rate is it doesn't only increase your damage, but it also increases. It also basically increases your attacker cast speed. It increases the speed with which your skills go off. So someone on 144 hertz, they'll be able to do longer combos because their skills will just take less time. So for example, the speed for my grave digging right now goes faster for someone on 200 FPS. There's actually a bug / exploit kind of thing on Warrior where what was it? Was it no, not that. I don't remember. There was a skill that you can do as a lead up, and then you do chopping kick, SF. And if you have over like 200 FPS, there's this bug where the chopping kick will begin to cancel into itself, and you'll see them start kicking very, very fast. and they'll just shred anyone in front of them. And that's an example of something that only happens if your chopping kick animation is short enough because your FPS is high enough. Other examples are just like, in general, there are some combos for warrior and some of the other faster classes that are only possible with higher FPS. So yeah, hardware matters, your connection matters. And finally, let's talk about a little bit about like the different PvP paradigms. So obviously in 1v1, using unprotected stuff from range is viable, and if you're comboing someone, using unprotected skills while they're on the ground is viable. With some matchups like Tamer being accepted, where like the dog can still come after you and CC you if you're doing something unprotected, so you just like reposition yourself to kite the dog while you're comboing. But that kind of stuff, like where you're once your opponent's on the ground, you're free to do whatever, goes away in small scale and then especially in large scale. 1v1s are very much about just knowledge of your class versus knowledge of your opponent's class, and the same for them, right? And then also the class matchup, right? So like warrior versus witch is really hard for witch just inherently. But once you go to small scale, some other stuff starts mattering. For example, types of utility you can have. So witch can cast speed spell and speed up her allies. She can also heal her allies, which can be very useful. If one of your allies gets caught and begins getting comboed, she can wait until they're about half dead, and then she can heal them. And that might cause them to survive the combo, depending on the opponent's AP. So paying attention in small scale to sort of helping your allies becomes a lot more important than just going for CCs on enemies, just raw aggression, right? Because in general, maintaining a numbers advantage is a huge advantage. You have more CCs going out and more area being covered, and more like just cooldowns that people have, right? More sort of a larger variety of CC cooldowns that people have access to. So if you're doing a 2v1, that guy has to worry about CCs coming from two different places, possibly in front of and behind them. So for example, if you're playing well and you're in a 2v1 situation, you should position yourselves on either side of the person, so that you can nullify their ability to frontal guard, right? And they'll try and position such that both of you are in front of of him or her, so that they can use frontal guard and block both of your kits. Times where this might not be a good idea are, for example, when one of the two of you is a caster, and so they're susceptible to being chased down. You might instead choose to take a defensive posture and defend your caster because you're just stronger. You can just overpower your opponent by standing on top of your caster. In general, it's important to know whether your class should play an offensive or a defensive role, or a supportive role in small scale. So casters will almost always be sort of a long range poke / supportive role in small scale. In large scale, that changes. In large scale, CC is king. So crazy, like really strong skills like Dream of Doom on Sorceress, or Meteor from Witchards, or if a Tamer can hop into the enemy ball and then use that Q, Void Lightning, and then hop out, because Tamers have enough lingering on their little hop move, enough lingering iframes to cover the gap. Well, depending on your ping. But if you've got a low enough ping, the lingering completely covers the gap, so you can just spam the hop indefinitely, and as long as you've got stamina and you can't be CC'd out of it. So you can iframe hop into the enemy ball, tap Q, instantly cancel it, and that Q has a super armor on it, so as long as you don't get grabbed in that like few frames, that you can just hop back out, and you'll have you'll leave High Lang behind doing that huge AoE stiffen, right? And so in general, you should know which of your skills are conducive to CCing the enemy in large areas and large numbers, and prevent you from being CC'd, right? So as I said, Dream of Doom On Sorceress, very, very long range, huge AoE knockdown. Witches have Meteor. They also witches and wizards also have Blizzard, which is particularly strong, not because it CCs, but because it slows, thereby increasing the gaps between skills. If there's any unprotected segment of a skill, it'll lengthen that gap. And yeah, also you'll see witches kind of suicide bomb, where they'll just double teleport into an enemy ball, or preferably single teleport if they're close enough, and then just blow all of their AoE damage, and then teleport back out. Because their Voltaic particularly is a very large AoE CC, and you can knock down a bunch of people. And so Dream of Doom is useful in all contexts because it's just a huge AoE and it does a lot of damage. And it's got crazy range. The range is basically render distance. Like SD, you could hit shift. Yeah, so you're not protected. If you notice in Dream of Doom, you're not protected. But oh, that's your 100%. But yeah, that hit me over here. But so if you wait what is it, 8 seconds, 10 seconds for it to cool down, and then throw it at me all the way over here, it will land. Go ahead and throw it at me. Hit left click.
Click.
You threw it at Oracle. Okay, there are too many people in the way. 1 sec.
You gotta aim it at us.
Okay, SD. Charge it back up, and then aim it at me and throw it. Do you see where I am? Yeah. So click on me. You gotta aim a little bit further up. But yeah, in general, like we're right at render distance, and you can throw that sucker really far. And it's got a really large AoE, and it's got multiple hits on the knockdown, which means it is very likely to CC people. Yeah, it should be off CD by now, SD. There you go. That hit, but we resisted the CC. But yeah, so you can see that like it has huge range. So it's really good for PvP, for large scale. Because also an interesting thing, when you're doing things from really long range, sometimes the skills stop rendering after they've traveled a certain distance. So you'll throw that Dream of Doom, and then it'll kind of just be invisible for enemies after a certain distance, and then they'll get hit by a giant black ball and fall over. So it's really scary and really strong. Same with Meteor. It's really like there's no real animation to look for. As like I can see you channeling it, but if I'm way far away and you're in a ball, I won't see you channeling Meteor, and then the CC is immediate after you start casting it, right? So if you've got 10 people in front of you, you might CC most of them with a Meteor if they're not actively cycling their cooldowns correctly and cycling their protections. So in small scale, you can see how it's much more about just playing around your opponent's cooldowns and sort of outplaying them, and it's about class knowledge and all that stuff. In small scale, it goes away from like actively trying to. Well, in some classes will be engaged classes like Ninja and Meiwa and Musa, and so they don't change all that much between 1v1 and small scale. But other classes will change significantly from 1v1 to small scale, where they'll go from just sort of playing defensively to playing supportively. And then in large scale, the focus goes way more towards just AoE CC, and then allowing ranged or just high damage classes to nuke all of the CC'd CC'd enemies.
Protect your mother.
Sorry?
I'm protecting you, man.
I partied her, so at least I can't hit her. But yeah, so that's most of what I wanted to talk about.
Thank you.
In general, yeah, no problem. In general, the steps for sort of getting into PvP are movement and CCs, and protections are the first step. You get a good idea of how to cycle those, how to use those, and then you start learning other classes. So once you've got a good grasp on your own class, you should start learning matchups. So if I'm a warrior, what do I need to pay attention to if I'm fighting a tamer, right? And then if I'm a warrior, what do I need to pay attention to when I'm fighting a wizard? What do I need to pay attention to when I'm fighting a sorceress, right? Because all of those matchups are completely different, right? If I'm fighting a sorceress, I need to know that she can iframe and she can instant cancel her shadow eruption and her shadow ignition out of iframes. I also know that neither of those skills are protected. So if she's going to hop, if she's going to use Nightcrow, and then she's going to use an unprotected CC skill, and she's using Nightcrow on a cadence, I can try and time a movement and a CC ability with her Nightcrow, so that I will dodge her follow-up CC that she's going to use on the end of her Nightcrow, and then answer it with my own to catch her out of that unprotected skill. Things like that, right? Just having a knowledge of how the other classes work, how they are generally played, what their normal pattern of play is, and how you can abuse that. But yeah, in general, learning your class consists first of learning your class, and then success in PvP comes from learning matchups, learning all the other classes.
That only comes from experience. So you just have to fight a lot.
Well, and also, when you fight someone and you get like murdered by something, and you're like, "What was that?" Go to BDO Codex, go to the skill build tool, the skill calculator tool, and it just lists out all of the class's skill trees, and you can go find the skill that just wrecked you, and you can go see what its cooldown is, whether it's frontal guard or super armor. Maybe it was unprotected and you didn't know that, so maybe you can punish that skill next time, etc. Right? So, like, let's say I was fighting a tamer, and I got hit by that dashy thing from Highlang. Well, so unfortunately, the Void Lightning skill doesn't actually list that Highlang add-on thing. But that's the other thing. If you're fighting someone and you get wrecked by something, you can ask them, like, what is that? And they should be able to tell you because they're playing their class. But yeah, learn the scary things and learn to avoid them. Yeah, can you put a leash on that dog, by the way? Being very naughty. But yeah, so let's go ahead and call it there. Let's call that the PvP seminar.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of answered at the end. I was going to say, like, what do you need to watch out for when someone's just starting to run at you to fight? Like, okay, what's your mindset? And then what is your mindset when you're trying to ambush or run at someone type thing? But yeah, it's class specific.
Right. Well, so kind of. If you're ambushing someone, that depends on your class, right?
Yeah.
But in general, you want to use something that's harder to see and harder to react to. So anything you can do fast is better.
A fly in or something.
Right. So your ambush engage on Guardian might be your SF in Awakening into just hitting right click, which is that sort of semicircular float slash thing, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So that might be your ambush. The other thing you might just do is you might just juggernaut in and grab them, but if that only works if they're not looking at you.
Yeah.
On Wizard, you might on Succession Wizard, you might teleport in and hit SQ for your AoE freeze. For Warrior, I might just like dash Solar Flare or something. Ninja, I'll probably just stealth up on you and then either grab you or CC you out of stealth. But yeah, so that goes to understanding sort of what your objective is, which is to CC them without them being able to react, and then understanding how your class does that.
Yeah.
Like, what are your fastest CCs? What is the fastest way you can get on top of someone and then CC them?
Yeah, because I'm still at the stage where if someone runs at me and I'm not expecting, I'll just panic, smash every button.
Right. So that's the other thing. Some classes are more offensive. So like Musa and Meiwa are very, very offensive. They'll just run at you and try and kill you. Guardian, as a slower class, has a more defensive playstyle inherently. So you have some defensive options. Your primary one is what is it called? Fierce Disdain. Your S or D, or sorry, your A or D in RMB. That thing is an iframe into a super armor with a stiff. So if I'm like dashing at you and I'm about this distance, you know that my next dash will have solar flare on it. If you knew the matchup, you'd also know that solar flare is not protected. So
Okay.
I would do that, and I would have a cadence, right? Because I'm dashing at you, and it goes boom, boom, boom. Like that's sort of the rate at which I'm dashing, right? So you have a good idea leading up to when I'm going to solar flare of about how quickly I'm going to reach you and when I'm going to solar flare. And so you time your fierce disdain to when you think that solar flare is going to hit, and you stiff me out of it. And that's obviously like something you practice, but that's a reaction you can have.
Yeah, I need to preempt it as well because ping-wise, so I need to do it slightly before.
Yeah.
Because just then I did it on your third dash, but yeah, I wasn't able to.
Yeah, and so that's just
Yeah,
there you go. Perfect. So I resisted the stiff, but that was perfect.
Yeah, so I had to do it on the second dash. So yeah.
Yeah, and so that's also going to be a function of your ping. Like it's hard, but it's something you figure out with a lot of practice.
Yeah, exactly. It's just experience thing.
So yeah, past this sort of general level of PvP knowledge, if you'd like me to teach you more, it'll probably have to be like individual because all of the classes are entirely different, and so anything beyond this is gonna be personalized basically. But yeah, you can hit me up and we can go mess around in the BA whenever you want.
Yeah, but yeah, we should always try and just PvP if no one's doing anything. It's the best way to practice.
Yeah.
Well, it is practice. It's the best way to get better.
Practice is the best way to practice. I agree.
This was so good. Thank you, Hawk. Like,
yeah,
Hawk has probably told me this a bunch of times, but it takes a while for it to sink in and really resonate.
Well, yeah. And then you have to have that practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amma just spent so long with me in the battle arena. Just me, like, basically when I go to train someone, we always start with just like, I have you memorize all of your protections, right? I'll just be like, do all of your super armors. And you'll use all of them. And I'll tell you if you forgot one, right? And I'll be like, all right, now do all of your frontal guards. And then I'll tell you if you forgot one. And then do all of your iframes, and I'll tell you if you forgot one. And I'll be like, all right, do a knockdown or something, right? And then so that like you just gain knowledge of your class. Man, my throat's getting real dry. But yeah. And then after that, yeah. After that, I moved to something I call tag, where we both take off all of our accessories. So we're really low AP, and we just play to CC each other over and over and over again. We just never die. And we just move around and we use CCs. And then whenever you get CC'd, I tell you how I CC'd you. Like what I saw you do, what I punished, what you did wrong. Right? And that teaches you sort of what mistakes you're making, and you start focusing on not making those mistakes anymore. And the higher the number of mistakes you're no longer making, the better a player you are in general. So if I tell you like you made this mistake or you have this bad habit, if you stop that bad habit, you've become a better player.
Yeah.
But yeah, so whenever people want to learn, just hop in. And also, like, one thing to keep in mind is don't hop into PvP with the expectation that you're going to be murdering people on your first day.
Yeah, won't happen.
Yeah, it won't happen. And also, like, especially if you're training with me, like,
it'll never happen.
Not to toot my own horn, but I've been kind of playing a while, and I've been kind of PvPing a while, and I've got like thousands of hours of like just PvPing, just like sitting in battle arena, just like fighting people for hours and hours on against every class, which is kind of why I can play every class.
That's why I get excited when I pull a grab off on you. It's like, fuck, I fucking grabbed you.
Yeah. But yeah.
It's just like, woo. But
and so that's the first thing that you see when you start when you start getting better, is it goes from like taking me 3 seconds to kill you to taking like 15, right? And so that's what the beginning of progress is going to look like if we're training. And also we're going to be playing tag, but like that goes to like the analog is it takes me less than like 3 seconds to CC you versus taking more than 15 to CC you. The longer you can go without being CC'd, the better a player you are.
Nice. Are all you guys off cooldown for your weeklies?
Yeah, I'm off.
We should go do our weekly then on our seasonal.
We're doing the weekly. We got a good crew going. This May while it's so weak. I gotta get out of here before I start thinking I'm really good.
Wait, who? Mystic AU?
Yeah, I've killed him I
That's
don't
a
know how
Musa.
many times. That's what I said, it Musa.
You said Mewa.
You said Maywa.
Oh, I did. I mean, that guy. The guy I keep killing. I gotta get out of here because he's super weak.
So on the Tamer stiff field, if you activate it when they're already in it, like if I activate it next to you point blank, it won't stiff you, right?
It will.
So if
You don't have Highling out.
you
Highling's
gotta-
add-on thingy is what does the stiffing. So now hit Q. Well, so I had my block up because I was hitting S, but yeah, everything inside that field gets stiffed.
Oh yeah, I'm on your same guild, or we can't
So
hurt
hit Q
each
again.
other. Or...
Oh, there it is.
I am stiff
How come
right
it's-
now.
how come-
Stiff.
how come I'm not
Stiff. I'll also use resonance. That thing, the Rabum resonance does a ton of damage.
I don't know the name of my fucking shit. Let me check what that is.
Sorry, do you know what a Rabum skill is? That's a term that kind of goes back a ways.
No.
They're the where it says skill enhancement, the combo skills, you know?
Oh yeah, skill enhancement.
Yeah, when people say so
There it
they
is.
were
Shift
called-
X.
they were called Rabums in Korea before they were added on NA. So everyone started calling them Rabums. And then when they released on NA, they had this translation of skill enhancement, which is awful and a ton of syllables. So everybody just kept calling them Rabums. But yeah, so if you don't know what a Rabum is, you basically need someone's gonna have to tell you because there's no way to sort of gather what that means. But yeah, so that thing does a ton of damage.
Oh, okay. This is
Or
a
can, but I
12
mean
12-second cooldown for that shit.
12 seconds isn't bad. It's sort of middling as far as cooldowns go. Shorter cooldown, like this is a 6-second cooldown, and that's egregious. There's no reason why slashing the dead should 12k damage multiplier, 6-second cooldown. That's not okay. But yeah, 12 seconds is sort of middling. Longer cooldowns, I don't know. The reason why I keep saying Zerker is such a trash class is because their highest damage and basically their only real damage skill is on a 30-second cooldown. It's not good. It's really bad. And it's not even that high damage.
Have you seen that video though? What's that one that Alma posted of that crazy Zerker just clearing an entire node war thing? It just jumps in and spins.
What?
But yeah.
I don't
Just
think I
jumps
saw
in
it. He probably just out-geared everybody.
Yeah, I think he was in wolf mode, and I think someone probably gave them the black spirit bar. He just jumps in and starts spinning, and the AoE is like the whole screen, and he just carves everyone down. But I think he cancels the video just before he dies, because I think there's a warrior or a Valkyrie rushing towards him just as the video ends. Because I'm guessing after that combo, he's out of more damage because that was massive.
So why though? As an exercise, I wanna try and guide you through crafting a combo for Tamer off of a grab. So let's say your grab is your catch, right? That's your catch
Yeah.
CC. So you're gonna use some damage. Your grab is a bound, so you only have about a second before you have to follow up, right? Or actually, I think it's a float. but you have about a second to follow up. So you can basically get one hit off, and you gotta re-CC me, or maybe a couple of hits.
It's a float. Yeah.
So you're gonna float me, and then you need to pick some damage to do. Right? What are your highest damage skills? You should be able to go through your kit and see which skill. Like the damage is based on those percentages, right? Like 800% times 13 or whatever, right? And so the hit count doesn't really matter as much, but the total damage of the skill is just the damage of each hit times the number of hits. And that will give you a general idea of how strong the skill is. So if you've got like 800 times 5, that's a 4,000% scaling, right?
I got a 16,000 times 3 plus 50% hit rate. crit hit.
1,600 times 3?
Yeah.
Okay, I was about to say 16,000 times 3 would make it like 10 times more powerful than anything else in the game. So that's probably high.
Yeah.
So
that's my
1,600 times
highest.
3. Did you say it was? Did you say that was 100% crit?
It's 50%. Yeah.
Okay, so 4,800 at 50% is not that strong. I feel like you've got some stronger stuff.
Uh.
Are you on Succession Tamer?
Yeah.
Skill calculator. Tamer. Let's go look at Succession. So your Bolt Wave is about 1,500 at 100%.
One I was looking for was Fearful Tremble, which is that.
We might need a platoon, guys, because I think we have more than 5 coming.
Oh,
What?
okay.
Oh.
Yeah, let's just start a platoon.
Okay.
Okay, so your Shift E, Surging Tide,